For exactly 52 years, the modern world operated under a secret, unwritten rule. A rule that guaranteed that no matter who won elections, no matter which wars broke out, and no matter how much the global economy fluctuated, one country would always remain at the absolute top. It was called the petrodollar, an intricate system where the West bought its survival from the Persian Gulf, and in return, the entire planet was forced to trade energy in American currency. If a nation tried to break this rule, their economy was systematically erased from the global map. But a massive shift in global trade has just disrupted this long-standing monopoly. While the mainstream media was looking away, India, now an unyielding economic superpower, completely rewrote the rules of geopolitical survival. By shifting its strategy to purchase over 50% of its oil from Russia and forging independent trade lifelines across the globe, India has successfully bypassed the traditional financial system. And across the Atlantic, the ultimate proof that the old order is dying has just played out. The United States, realizing the petrodollar is on a terminal decline, enacted a dramatic, high-stakes intervention to secure its own emergency backup source, Venezuela, home to the largest oil reserves on Earth. To understand how the world split in two, we have to look at New Delhi. For decades, Western foreign policy operated under a simple assumption: you are either with us or you are against us. But India chose a third path, one that has left Western economists completely stunned. When the conflict in Europe broke out and the West launched the most aggressive financial sanctions in human history to isolate Russian oil, they expected the global market to fall in line. Instead, India saw a historic opening. Prior to 2022, less than 1% of India's oil came from Russia. Today, Russian crude makes up a staggering 52% of India's entire import slate. The brilliance of the Indian strategy wasn't just buying cheap oil, it was the mechanism. By settling these multi-billion-dollar trades in local currencies like rupees and dirhams, India proved something terrifying to the Western financial elite. A global superpower can fuel its historic rise while remaining completely immune to Western banking bans. For generations, India's primary vulnerability was geographical determinism. Roughly 40% of its energy had to pass through a single, highly volatile bottleneck, the Strait of Hormuz. If a war broke out in West Asia, or if the Gulf nations decided to squeeze the supply, India's economic growth would grind to a halt. So, New Delhi decided to bypass the Gulf entirely. While building a massive 80-day strategic oil reserve at home, India aggressively diversified. They didn't just turn to Russia, they heavily backed the international north-south transport corridor through Iran, creating a secure, overland supply line that Western navies and Middle Eastern cartels can never block. By the time traditional suppliers realized what was happening, the Gulf's leverage over the world's fastest-growing market had effectively evaporated. But as the East built its parallel system, a much darker chess move was being played out in the Western Hemisphere. To understand why, you have to look at the numbers. Most people assume Saudi Arabia holds the keys to the world's oil. They are wrong. The largest proven oil reserves on planet Earth belong to Venezuela, holding a massive 300 billion barrels of crude. For years, Venezuela was kept under a suffocating web of Western sanctions. But as the petrodollar began its structural decline, Washington faced a brutal mathematical reality. If Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states are increasingly cooperating with the BRICS bloc, and if global trade is shifting away from the US dollar, the United States could no longer rely on the Middle East to guarantee its global energy dominance. It desperately needed a plan B. This is the hidden context behind the aggressive, multi-year US interventions, sanctions waivers, and political maneuvers in Caracas. The United States didn't just want to stabilize a neighbor, they needed to bring the world's largest oil reserve directly back into the Western sphere of influence. By forcing a structural rewrite of Venezuela's oil laws and ensuring that its massive heavy crude operations are managed by Western energy giants, Washington effectively built an emergency financial firewall. If the Middle East completely abandons the dollar, the West now has an untouchable, domestic-adjacent energy fountain right in its own backyard. The global war for oil is no longer about scarcity. It is about architectural survival. The old world, where a single financial system dictated who could buy, sell, and prosper, is officially dead. In its place, two parallel worlds have arrived. One, led by India's masterful geopolitical balancing act, is proving that raw national interest trumps international pressure. The other, led by a calculating Western scramble for assets like Venezuela, is racing to fortify its borders before the currency that built the modern world loses its power forever. The pieces have been moved. The new map is set. And the final battle for global dominance has only just begun.